Okay, welcome everyone to Views for Beginners in Drupal 8. I know it can be tempting to kind of read the descriptions of the sessions and kind of pick a session based on that. Well, let me give you a quick description of what this session is going to be about. The primary focus of the session is going to be Views for Beginners. So if you don't know Views, if you've never used Views before, if you've heard of it and would like to learn a little bit more about it, that is going to be the focus of today. It's going to be a very beginner level presentation. Secondly, the second sort of focus of today is Drupal 8. Views is now in Drupal 8 core, and there are some new features that are available in it, and I'm going to be highlighting those as we go through it. But the primary focus, again, is going to be creating your first view, how to change it, some different features of that, and then what's unique about Drupal 8. So let me take a moment to introduce myself. My name is David Needham. This is my wife Alicia and my daughter Hannah and my son Daniel. I'm going to be using them today as examples, so I thought it's important to kind of introduce them. My wife Alicia, in addition to taking care of my kids, also does a sort of at-home craft business and makes like custom sort of artisan chais and things like that. So I'll use her in a few examples, and you'll get to see a little bit more about that. I am the executive director at Enjoy Creativity. It's a nonprofit that helps churches and ministries with web design and SEO and marketing and all of those different things. And then also I am a partner at Triplo. We are a organization both out of the Twin Cities that helps freelancers and contractors to kind of expand their personal business to become whatever they want to be with their own sort of goals. Some people want to have independence from location, they want to travel. Some people want to get rich. Some people want to do both or work part-time or something else. And Triplo is there to kind of help them become what they want to be. So I've been working with Drupal for about 8 years, almost 8 years. I've always been, I feel like if I had what's the word, a shoebox, not a shoebox, what's the word, the thing you stand on, the soapbox, yes. If I had a soapbox to stand on, it would be kind of fighting for the beginners, the doing things in the interface. I feel like there can be a lot of intimidation about writing code for people who don't know code. It's like a totally different language, somewhat literally. And so one of the things that really drew me to Drupal is that I could do so much from the interface, from the UI. I could do these very, very complex things without having to know MySQL and PHP, and certainly if you know those things, you can do even more. But I've been fighting as much as I can for the beginners, trying to make it more and more powerful and easy to use. So that's why Views is so wonderful. I've had people ask me, like, well, Views is kind of a Drupal-specific name. What exactly is Views? Technically, it's a query builder. It's a query builder that gives you a graphical interface so that you can click and pick the content you want and kind of drill down and find a specific list of things and display it in a particular way. But, we're using a little bit of jargon. I want this to be very beginner, kind of easy for beginners to pick up. So really, a view is just a way of creating dynamic lists. Your website, most websites are created from multiple dynamic lists of content. So to illustrate this, I'm going to use my wife. She has a small blog, and she might sell stuff on her, in her store. She wants to create content on her site. So if she was just doing this with a static HTML website, not in Drupal, she would create the content. She'd write out the blog post or whatever. And then she would have to, go to the front page and say, okay, here's my most recent blog post, go check it out. And she might have to go to the rotating slideshow and say, here's our featured product for the week, and kind of write that out. And she'd have to know a little bit of code to do the jQuery for the slideshow, and she'd have to know, this links to that page and that links to that page, and write out all the code to make it work. And so she'd have to go to the front page, do that. She'd have to update the full list of blog posts and edit that, copying the divs and all the links and all that stuff. And it's complicated, right? So she'd have to do this every single time that you create a new piece of content. She'd have to go and update it on multiple pages of the website just so that people can find the content that she's creating. Or you could, know a little bit of MySQL and PHP. You could essentially create your own content management system. You could create, the system for automatically and dynamically updating content on your site. But again, this is a beginner class. You're not supposed to, or you don't have to know code in order to do this. And, we're using Drupal, and we're using views. So, Alicia can jump in, create some content, and then she can drink some chai, which is really what she wants to do. She wants to kind of create the content on her site and then move on with her day. She wants to, keep going with what she's doing. And that's beautiful. That's something you can do here. You don't have to know code or a lot of the technical details about what Drupal is doing in the back end. So here's an example. This is a church website we created, and it's made up with a lot of views. So here's one at the top. It's a slideshow using the Flex Slider module. It's a view. It's a list of featured content. We also have the latest sermon. It's a an audio file, and we have the graphic, and we have the text, and the date it was created. That will always show the most recent. That's also a view. We also have a list of announcements, which is a view with a date and some sort of information. We also have a list of volunteer opportunities. So again, these are all different content types. Some of them are different content types, all showing the content differently, dynamically. A person who's maintaining this website doesn't have to know what Drupal is doing. They can just go say, I want to create a new volunteer opportunity, and I want to feature it on the front page. And they check the box, they click save, and the entire website updates to kind of let the content flow throughout and end up where it's supposed to be. So how exactly does views work? And this is where the analogy with my daughter Hannah comes in. So first, try to think of a bathtub. Okay, whenever I'm giving my daughter a bath, we have a bathtub here. The bathtub is sort of the framework. It's the infrastructure. It's everything that we need to take a bath. Without a bathtub, it's just kind of water everywhere. It doesn't work, which maybe my daughter would prefer sometimes. So it's the network, the hardware, it's sort of everything that keeps it together. Next, we fill the bathtub. This is the stuff that we need to get Drupal actually functioning. We have the database, we have the PHP, we have the Drupal installation itself with all the fields and the views and all those different things. But something's missing, right? So we have the soap and water, and if I tried to give my daughter a bath with just the soap and water, it's probably not going to fly. She's not going to be very happy because something's missing. It's the duckies. She wants the bath toys. She wants the things that are floating in the bathtub. And in this case, our duckies are our content. The duckies, they're the things that the articles and the products and the blog posts and the events and all those different pieces. Without the content, what is your website really? Right? There's no reason to have a website without any content. But if you're just creating all this content, it's really hard for people to find what they're looking for, right? We have all these different types of duckies, and duckies come in different flavors. We have different content types. You might have a Star Wars ducky. You might have a Marvel ducky or a Wizard of Oz ducky or whatever. There are all sorts of different things. And what if you're looking for a particular set of duckies to put in the bathtub? Well, this is where views comes in. Views is essentially the net that helps us keep our ducks in a row. I might be stretching the analogy a little bit, but it helps us sort of keep our ducks, our content, in a particular format, in a particular order, so we can then take that and display them. So it's letting us find from all the content that exists on our website. It lets us pick and choose and take the pieces, sort them, do stuff to it, and then display it to the world so that everyone can see what we have. So to kind of recap where we're at so far, a view is just a selection of content that we then take, format, and sort, and do stuff with, and then we display it. It's as simple as that. You could take views in a number of ways, like I said, slideshows, or a list of products, or a calendar, or whatever. No matter how it is, it still follows this sort of pattern. So I've mentioned display, I think, a few different times. A display is a Drupal, or a terminology in views for how you're actually displaying the content. So it's configuration to take the content we've selected and to display it in a particular way. So whether it's, like I said, the slideshow or the calendar or just the list, the table, things like that. you're able to say, I want this to appear as a full-blown page that has a menu and a URL, or maybe I want this to be a block that just shows up on the sidebar. Or maybe I want it to be an RSS feed that people can subscribe to, or that goes to iTunes for the podcast. This is the same sort of subset of data that's being displayed in different places in different ways. This is views. It lets us say, I'm taking this one, subset of content that is, the same content, and I'm displaying it differently depending on how it's being digested, how people want to actually consume the data. So now it's time for the demo. So we're going to walk through this, creating our first view, and yeah, seeing what that looks like to have a list of blog posts on our website in Drupal 8. So for this slideshow, this is my second time doing this. I don't have a live demo. I was encouraged to do screenshots. So I have the screenshots, but I have a backup live demo in case it's a little different. So some minor things have changed in Drupal 8 since the slideshow. Very minor things, but it'll be relatively similar. So all that I've done prior to this point, prior to starting this, showing you the slides, is install Drupal 8. I just use the standard installation profile. If you find it complicated to install Drupal locally, you can use Pantheon. They have a quick and easy installer, just one click and you go through and it spins it up for you. And after doing that, after setting up Drupal, I just created some content. So I went in and created a basic page. I created a few articles, just to kind of get us some stuff to work with. So the first step to going through this, after we get it all set up, is to install views. So in Drupal 7, this is what you'd have to do. You'd have to go out and grab the views module. You'd have to go grab the chaos tools module. You'd have to pull them in, install them. You might have to configure them a little bit, to get them working, and then you're ready to go. Well, in Drupal 8, you don't actually have to install these modules because they're in core. It's pretty awesome. You don't have to go and install any additional modules. You just install Drupal 8, and there they are. And then the cool thing is you actually don't even have to enable them. In Drupal 8, if you choose the standard installation profile, it assumes that you're going to use views. 99% of all websites built in Drupal use views. Thank you. Yeah, so you really don't have to do anything. You install Drupal 8 and you're ready to start creating views. That's all you need. So here we go. This is my Drupal 8 website. Haven't done anything to it yet. I just need to create some content. But I'm ready to create my view now. One second. So I go up to up the top. I click on structure. I click on views. And here we go. I have my list of all of the views that are on my website. Now in older versions of Drupal, the list was, it kind of didn't start with any views, or the views that it did start with were they didn't do anything out of the box. You had to kind of enable them and then configure them if you wanted to override something that Drupal was doing already. But because Drupal is now because views is now part of core, all of the lists that you find in Drupal core are built using views. So if you want to change something like how the front page is displayed, or how that the admin list of content is displayed. If you want to add a new column or add a filter or something, all you have to do is come in here and click edit. You don't have to do any weird overriding or any programming there. You just say, I don't like the way that Drupal's displaying my list of content. I'm going to come in here and add a new column or a filter or whatever. So that's a really cool new feature. So we want to create a new view. We're going to create some blog posts. So I'm going to click up there on Add New View. And I'm presented with this screen right here. So I start off just by naming the view. Say news. And then you can add a description. This is primarily for administrators to let them know what this particular view is being used for. And then there's the view settings. So there is a saying in an older version of views that if you can describe what you want out of a view in a single sentence, you can probably do it in views. And they came out with a module that presented something a little bit like this. So it actually says show content of type article tagged with something and then sorted by newest first. So this is super easy to kind of delineate the sort of content you're looking for, or the users you're looking for, or what other type of thing you want to show in the view. The next option here is create a page. We do want to create a page of blog posts, so we'll keep that box checked. And then it automatically filled in the title and the path because of the view name that we provided at the top. A little bit below that, we have the page display settings. We want, in this case, to show a unformatted list of teasers. We can choose something else a little bit different later if we'd like to, but right now it's just basically a div-separated list of the summary content of our teasers. So it would have like a title, author and date, and then the first paragraph or so of the blog post. That's what a teaser would be. And then we're saying we want to show 10 items, and we want to use a pager. In this case, a pager would be the thing at the bottom where, show me the first 10, and then show me next. And then I'm on page 1 of 2. You click it, you see page 2 of 2, and you see the remaining amount. So if I scroll down the page here, I also have to create a menu link right there. Checking that will add it to the menu automatically. And then we get to say which menu we want it to appear in. We also have the text that appears there, and that's the same. It was auto-populated based on our title. And then we can say, do we want to include an RSS feed based on this page? Do we want to create a feed that people can subscribe to or whatnot? And so we'll say, okay, sure. So we'll check the box, and it names it news.xml. A little bit further down the page here, we have block settings. Do we want to create a block that appears on the sidebar, or the header, or the footer, or something like that? I think it'd be really handy to see a list of recent blog posts, maybe the 5 most recent titles of our blog posts. So we'll say, okay, show me an HTML list, or like an ordered, ordered or like numbers or bullets of titles, and I want to see 5 of them. So I'll click Save and Edit. The page will refresh, and we'll be presented with the Views interface. So this interface can be a little bit intimidating, mostly because there's a lot of things you can do here. The interface in Views, or the functionality you get out of Views, is very powerful. You can do a lot with it, so there are a lot of settings to choose from. Basically, anywhere that you see the blue highlighted text, or the drop button, or the add with the kind of down arrow, those are all things you can click. And often when you click them, you have even more options within that. It's not a simple yes, no. So in this case, we're saying, all of the configuration that we did on that previous page has been entered into Views for us right here. So if we want to make any changes, we can see that just right here. So if we scroll down the page a little bit, another cool feature of Views is that we get a preview. So we kind of scroll down the page, and we see we have a list of teasers. This is what we're going to see when we click Save and generate this page. We see we have the photos, we have the title, the submitted by information, and the first paragraph or two, a list of links at the bottom. And then because we said we wanted this to generate an XML feed for us, it also included the tiny little RSS feed button at the bottom, the little icon, so that people know I can click here to get the XML feed. So let's jump back up to the top. If we want to make a change, like I said, it's as easy as clicking one of the lists or one of the links there. So let's click the menu one. I might have put this in the wrong menu. Maybe I put it in the administration menu instead of the main menu. So I clicked it. This dialog box pops up where I can choose all sorts of features. I'm going to keep the name the same, and I'm going to change the parent here to main navigation so it shows up in our actual menu, not the administrative menu or anything else. And then I click Apply. After clicking Apply, it's important that we remember that we haven't saved the view yet. We haven't actually committed our change to the view. And it reminds you here at the very top. It actually says, you have unsaved changes with an exclamation point, warning sign. So you are able to kind of make a bunch of changes, and if you don't remember to click Save, over time it could be lost, but Views is pretty gracious. It actually saves it in the cache here. If you navigate away from the page, forget to click Save, come back later, as long as it's within sort of a reasonable amount of time, it might still be there. You might still have your configuration changes saved in the cache. But don't forget, it's saying, hey, don't forget to click Save. So you click Save, and then boom, it takes you to the page. So here's a brand new page on our website, didn't exist before, and it's a list of our recent blog articles. Pretty simple so far. But wait a minute, you might be asking yourself, we told it we wanted to create a block too, not just a page, but also a block. I don't see a block of articles with the titles like we said. Where could it be? Well, This is a very common situation that people are in. So we created the block, but we haven't actually told it where to display on the website yet. So to do that, we have to go up to Structure and Blocks, and then you're presented with the brand new Drupal 8 block system interface. If you haven't seen this before, it's okay. It's pretty good interface. It's been significantly improved since Drupal 7. You see here on the right side, we have the place blocks. This is all the blocks that are available to us, and simply by clicking one, we're able to add it into a region. You can click it as many times as you want. You can create as many instances of that block as you'd like to, and place it in whatever regions you want. This is vastly improved over Drupal 7 because the biggest problem with blocks in Drupal 7 is that once you have placed a block in a region, it's in that region, and you can't create another one. You can't say, I want it to be in the sidebar on every page except the front page, and on the front page I want it to be in the footer. You just can't do that. You either have to use the context module, or you have to use a theme to kind of make it kind of fake itself to move back and forth, and it's just not pretty. Using the new interface, though, we can create as many instances of the block as we want, place it wherever we want to go, and it's significantly improved. So we have the blocks here. On the left side, we have all the regions where we can put our blocks. So we might have the header, footer, left, right, sidebar, content top, content bottom, things like that. And we would like to add our view block. So let me jump back. We have actually on the side here, we have list views. These are all the views that we've created that have blocks in them. So right at the very top, we have the news list. That's the one we created, so we click that. We have this dialog pop up. We would like it to display the title. We would like it to display the 5. That's what we set by default. And then we can set some visibility restrictions. Where do we want it to show up when? So we could say, I don't want this to appear on any basic pages, or I only want it to appear on the front page, or I only want administrators to see this particular block. Those are all things you can control with visibility. And then at the bottom, we choose what region this should appear in. So I think we're going to say the right sidebar. So here we go. We have our news page, reviewing this. We have the latest news on the sidebar. Okay, it's okay. But the latest news on the sidebar, it doesn't really feel completed, right? It's just a list of links. I'd really love to see the author, maybe the date it was created, maybe formatted a little bit better. So to do that, we can, go back to our view that we created, configure it from there. We can go up to Structure, Views, find our view, click Edit, find the block display, click Edit from there. But we can skip straight to where we want to go. There's a great contextual link on most content and views and blocks in Drupal 7 and Drupal 8, where all that we do is hover over the latest news block. We get this little pencil icon. We click the pencil icon, and now we can choose Edit View. And this is going to skip all those extra steps and take us straight to the view that generated this particular block. So we do that, and we see here's the view, and at the top we can see that we're on the block display of this view. And then we want to make a change. We want to add a couple extra fields. We don't just want to see the title, but we want to see the author and the date. So we go over to Fields, we click Add, and you're presented with all the options you have for all the fields in your Drupal site. So we search, we find the particular fields we're looking for. In this case, the authored by, it's going to be the author, and then the authored on, the date that it was created. We'll check those boxes, we'll click Apply this display, and then we're presented with our first configuration of this section for this particular field. Yeah.
Is it getting those from the content types definition in the database?
Yes, from all of your content types, it pulls the list of fields from all of the fields that you have on your content types.
So it's based on the content type.
Right. Yep. So there's lots of configuration you can do from this for every single field that you can add. I don't have time to dig into every little thing, but I encourage you to jump in and kind of play with this. Views is very forgiving. If you create a view, it's very easy to jump in, make a change, view the preview, go back, make another change, view the preview, and kind of see what each little option does, because there are a lot of options in here to choose from. So I think this looks fine. In this case, it's going to create our author with a link to the author, which is totally fine. So we'll click apply and continue. And now this is the authored on field. Again, we can choose some configuration. I think the default date for the date it was created is long date, which is going to be, Monday, October 23rd at whatever time in this time zone. Like, it's very, very long and verbose. Probably a little bit overkill for what we want to see on the sidebar. There's not even room for it to fit on the sidebar very well. So instead, I changed it to time ago. And in this case, it's going to say, this was created 5 days ago or 3 minutes ago. Much more personal, much better for a blog post feel on the sidebar. So I think that works. So I'll click apply this display, and then I'll be sure to click save at the bottom of my view, and it'll jump me right back to the page I was looking at before, and I can see latest news, and it says, example article by the author at whatever time, 1 hour, 10 minutes ago. Okay, that's pretty good. I feel like the formatting is still maybe a little bit off. It could be improved. I'd really love it to say, like, sort of on one line, the article title by so-and-so, and then the date below it. And then maybe something bold or maybe something italics. We can play with that. So I'm going to use the contextual link to jump right back to the block. I'm going to go to my section right here, and I'm going to start just by rearranging my fields. This is unfortunate, I think, but when Views goes through the list of fields to render them, it starts at the first field that you've defined here and goes down to the bottom. In this case, we want to combine two fields together. We want to actually put the authored by the date in line with the title. So in this case, I want to show the date on the title field. So to do this, I have to rearrange the fields and move the authored by above the title. So I'll click the drop button next to the ad. I'll click rearrange. And then I'll have a drag and drop interface for actually moving them around. Once I've done that, I can go and edit the title. I can go down to rewrite results, and I can click on override the output of this field with custom text. Now, if you just type into this field, you can type whatever you want, and it's not very helpful. In order to get the most out of this, you have to use tokens or kind of like variables. So if you scroll down this configuration a little bit, we have a section that says replacement patterns. Replacement patterns lets you use any other field that you've already defined in this view to put within this box. So looking at the replacement patterns here, I can see I have the UID, the title, and then the raw title. It's not been sort of plain text. So I can go up to the top and I can retype that out, or I can copy and paste. So it's using Twig. We can say title by UID. In this case, I know the UID is the author's ID, the user ID. So looking at that, I think this is probably going to work. Maybe I need some other changes, but I think this is pretty good. Let's just save this and see what it looks like. So I'll click apply. I'll go back, and now I have this. So example article by D8 views, and then the next line I have the date. I feel like this could still be improved, but we could kind of do this all day. So I'm going to stop at this point for the block, and I think that's a pretty good place to leave that. But that's not all. Okay, so we've been doing all this configuration in views. I think this is a little strange looking at this, that we're seeing all the redundancy, right? We're looking at our news page, and then we have the block on the sidebar that has exactly the same content, so it's being repeated. Not really helpful to have that block on this particular page. So to change that, remember we have all those visibility rules to choose from in the block configuration. So again, we go to this block, we use a contextual link, we click configure block, and then we go down to the visibility section. We say we want this to be hidden for the listed pages and news. We do not want to see this block on the news page anymore. Every other page is fine, just not the news page. So that looks pretty good. We'll click save block, and then boom, it disappeared. It's no longer on the news page. But if you navigate to the front page or the about page, it is there. So that's also really helpful if, say, for example, you had related content. You have other content by this author that you only want to appear on the article page, or kind of the list goes on and on about all the examples of when you want some content to appear in some places but not others. Okay, so that's kind of the gist of the adding a view and making simple configuration to the view. But there are a lot of new things in Drupal 8 that I really didn't have time to get into. First, something I'm pretty excited about, there's a lot more new displays that you can choose from. I mentioned earlier in the example you could create a page or a block. We did that. We also created a feed. And here are all the other options you can choose from. I have time to go through the list, so real quick, let me just go down this list and describe what they are. Attachment. An attachment display will let you take a particular view that you've created and attach it to the top or bottom of another view. This is really helpful if you had, let's say you wanted to feature the first blog post in like a much bigger photo with a much maybe longer, slightly longer description of what the blog post is about. And then all the rest of them, you just want it to be a simple list. You could create an attachment view that is that featured sort of big image, thing at the top. Attach it to the top of that page that we just created, and then it's done. There are multiple ways you could kind of do something like that, but an attachment makes it pretty simple to kind of tie these views together. The block, we already kind of talked about that. You put it in a region. Embed is pretty cool. When I presented this at DrupalCon LA, and they hadn't actually defined what all of these displays did, like anywhere on Drupal.org that I could find. So I had a lot of trouble actually describing what these were for, but I think I got it now. Embed actually lets you easily embed this on a page, like within the body text, within code. You could say, you create a display here, and maybe you want people to reference. Maybe you have a person who's writing blog posts and you want to feature products on the website. You have a list of products that they're recommending. You could create an embed view here that would generate a little bit of code, or give you a little bit of something that you can take and put into your body text and put in there. Again, I haven't had a chance to use embed. I don't know exactly what the embed code looks like yet, but it should let you more easily put views in more places on the website, not just in a region, or kind of lets you mix up the content a little bit more. Entity reference. So the entity reference module is actually part of Drupal core now too. It lets you easily relate different pieces of content on the site. So if you were here for the previous presentation, we had different versions of like, here are the movies in Star Wars and all the people that are in the movies in Star Wars. You could say, here's episode 1, it had Anakin Skywalker and the R2-D2 and all these. These are now connected because they use an entity reference field to say, show me all the list of movies that are available. So you'd create R2-D2, you'd say, okay, episode 1, episode 2, and you select them, and you're kind of mixing the content together. Using views, you're able to create very complex lists of content. So rather than just say, show me the list of all the movies, all the Star Wars movies, you could say, show me the list of all the Star Wars movies and the images and the date it was created. Just kind of a little bit more information. You have a lot more control over how people are referencing other pieces of content. The feed, we talked briefly about that. Let's just create a simple RSS feed, page, very simple page, and then REST export. This might be the one I'm most excited about. So you've heard a lot about restless Drupal, headless Drupal. Kind of turning your website to not necessarily be the content not necessarily consumed directly by going to your Drupal website, but by making it available like an API to mobile apps, or to be kind of consumed in other sorts of ways. Letting your Drupal interface be a place for people to create content, for people to kind of interact with in totally other ways than just visiting your website. So using a REST export, you could say, I want to create a JSON feed, or something like that, so that if you're creating a mobile app, you can then use JSON to go out and grab, show me the blog post's author's photo, and you could query it and it would show it, and then you could easily connect it to your mobile app without having to add a bunch of extra modules or anything like that. There's so many great use cases for this that are even better than the one I just came up with, and it's really exciting. Another great new feature in Drupal 8, and this is probably if you've been using views a lot, you're probably not supposed to be here right now. But if you have been, you have probably been frustrated by the fact that maybe you've created a display and your project manager's like, oh hey, this is gonna be a page, so you create a page display, you do all this configuration to the display, and then like, oh well, it's actually going to be sort of supplementary list. It's not actually going to be a page. It's going to be a block that we want to put in the sidebar. Okay, well, you can clone displays as much as you want. Like, clone it, it becomes a new page. Clone it, it becomes a new page. Whatever. You can't create a block from a page. Like in Drupal 7, it just doesn't allow that. So in Drupal 8 here, in addition to duplicating the page display, we could also duplicate this as any other display that we'd like. So once you've created, let's say, back to our blog example, we have the news, we have our articles, we have the page and the block and the feed. What if we wanted to introduce a mobile app? We wanted to kind of create an API so that people can be connected to our website through that. We could actually say duplicate as REST export, and then without any extra work, at this point at least, it takes everything we've done on one display and then generates it in a totally different way. So again, you could use this as this. You could easily add a feed or whatever. It saves a lot of time and a lot of hassle, which is great. And really, this is just a drop in the bathtub. All the things we've talked about today is really just a tiny, tiny, very small amount of things you can do with views. You can create calendars and events, you can slideshows, press releases, on and on and on. There's so much you can do with views and with Drupal. And, I really feel like this is Drupal's competitive advantage. Drupal and WordPress have been kind of going head and head, and they've been sharing lots of technologies and lots of efforts for improving usability and things like that. And we've taken things from each other over time, which is great. But I think one of the things that makes Drupal is that you can create a content type, you can add fields to the content type, you can add content to kind of give your website some content, and then you can create views to let people digest that content however they want. And this is a pattern that you can do over and over and over again for all the various types of features that you want to add to your website. So all the features I listed on the previous page, an event calendar, add an event content type, add a date field, add some content, create a calendar. Okay, slideshow, create a slideshow content type, add some field, add content, create a slideshow. On and on. Like any sort of feature that's related to content you can imagine, in this case, is creating the structure, adding the fields, and kind of going from there. And so, like I said, almost any feature that you can imagine you could create using this sort of pattern, and without code. You can create these very, very complex data structures, all without having to know what Drupal is actually doing behind the scenes. And the reason is because community. The reason is because Earl Miles back in the day was kind of tired of having to write the same bit of code over and over and over again, and he had other people that he wanted to kind of empower them to do the same. And so he created the Views module and the Chaos Tools module. The whole reason why Drupal exists in the first place is because because community is to kind of connect people together. And that's really attractive. Community is really the biggest competitive advantage that Drupal has. And with that in mind, there are various sprints. There's various ways that you guys can get involved, both this weekend as well as, whether you're from the Bay Area or wherever you're from. There's always sort of Drupal events happening, within a driving distance, probably. There's all sorts of sprints going on, this weekend, like all the time. I think pretty much all the time here. Right over there in the big sponsor area, there's sprints. There's also a private sprint room, I think maybe Drupal 8 sprint room that you can find on the Badcamp website. It's just a way for you to come in and say, I'd like to help somehow. Is there a way that I can get plugged in to find bugs or to test patches or review documentation? You don't have to know a lot of code to be able to sprint. The community is very welcoming to beginners, so it's a great way to kind of get involved and then see what Drupal is doing behind the scenes. And really, if you're asking yourself who should sprint, it's you. It's everyone. I like to sprint because I feel like I learn a lot, but I'm sort of at the point where there's a saying like you don't know what you don't know. Because I know how Views works, because I know how Drupal and why Drupal does things a particular way. I don't see the bugs that you guys would see. I don't see the why is Drupal doing it, this asinine way? It should be doing this other way. Or, oh, why is it called a node? Or why is it called taxonomy or whatever? Like that doesn't. Why isn't it called this other thing that's much more appropriate? Those are things that I don't think about anymore because I've kind of, I've just adapted to it. And those are things that you guys can help with. You can, go to a particular page on Drupal.org, all the documentation on Drupal.org, and if you find a bug, if you find something that is incorrect, or there's a typo, or it's not grammatically correct, notice here at the top, once you log in, it actually says, hey, so-and-so and so-and-so edited this, but you can edit this page too. So you click the link, and you have a screen. I know a lot of beginners especially are very intimidated by the thought of writing documentation, but it's again, very forgiving. Like, you can make a change on here and not be concerned about like losing other people's work. There's revisions in place, people can see what was changed when by who, and it's easy to kind of undo something if you just made a little mistake. Not a big deal. It's much better for the documentation to be up to date and relevant than to be, quibbling over a little minor thing like that. So feel empowered. Go out and kind of make Drupal better by whatever way you feel like you're best able to help. And with that, I'd like to just take a moment to thank people, especially like the Views and Core team. I mentioned Earl Miles and Tim Plunkett and all sorts of other people that have been giving hours and hours and hours of time to make Drupal what it is. Also, some of the information I got about what's coming in Drupal 8 down the road, it came from Joe Fender and Oliver Seldman. And with that, I hope you've enjoyed Views for Beginners in Drupal 8. I do have a few minutes for questions. Yes?
Can you talk a little bit about contextual filters and how does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So contextual filters and how do they work? So in the view, you're able to create a filter, which is show me this content type, or show me content that has the field answered in a particular way. A contextual filter will let you sort of dynamically filter the content you're viewing. So, for example, if we had our blog posts, maybe we wanted to show all of our blog posts from a particular topic. If we had a list of tags there, maybe some are about crafting, some are about creating chai, some are about whatever else, and she's tagged all of her blog posts that way. We could create a contextual filter based on that tag field, and then we could say, okay, well, if you go to /news, it shows all of them, but then if you go to /news/chai, it shows all of the chai related ones, or if you get rid of that and say /crafts, it'll show all the craft related ones. That's a very simple example, but it can get more and more complex. So you can create a contextual filter to say, show me, the Star Wars example, show me all of the characters that are within the movie I'm viewing right now. You could create a contextual filter that says, grab the current node ID, the ID of the page I'm looking at, whatever movie it is, pass it through that entity reference field, and then show me all the things that are referencing this particular page, and then generate a list of those. So it's complex. It's one of the things that I have to do that iterative, make a change, see if it worked. No. Okay, make another change. Okay, it did. And try again and again.
I tried doing one just for an author and it just not working.
Okay, well, we can take a look afterwards. Yeah.
So realistically, when is a good time to start building a Drupal? Like, if you're building a brand new website and eventually Drupal 8 is going to be coming, do you just build it in Drupal 7 and hope for the best that you can?
Yeah, right. So that's a great question. I'll repeat it for the recording. When is a good time to be using Drupal 8? When should you start? Now?
Really? Even if all your modules are still in Drupal 7?
It depends, right? There is no right answer for sure. If you're doing something with commerce, it's not ready, you shouldn't do that. But you might be surprised how much you can do out of the box with Drupal 8. They've incorporated a lot of modules, they've written some new modules. I've been extremely surprised how much I can do just out of the box without adding anything extra. And then there's other great organizations like Phase 2 and Chapter 3 where they've kind of committed to saying, we're recommending all of our clients to start with Drupal 8, and we're willing to port any module that we have to use over to Drupal 8 and contributing that back. So they're saying, Path Auto and Webform and all these different ones that everyone uses on all of their websites, there's this huge push to get them ready for Drupal 8. So unless you know, like the module that you need is very specific, it might be time to start looking. Yeah, but there isn't a definitive yes or no answer, unfortunately. Yeah. You're welcome. Any other questions? Yes.
Can you give any some user cases that they're not supposed to use Vue?
So some use cases should not use views.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see. Can you give me any use cases where you're thinking about using views?
Yeah, I know I use a lot of views, but sometimes maybe I think maybe I have some use cases you think is not suitable for views.
Yeah, I have a really hard time thinking of a use case. That being said, at the end of the last presentation, he was talking a little bit about entity field queries, which you have to know code to do. But if you're just looking for something very simple, you just need a very if you want to do it in code and then not worry about all the markup and generating the UI that Views does. If you want something to be really, really quick, sometimes not doing it in Views can be better. But you have to know the code, and you get a little bit more control then over the query that it's running in the database that way too. But man, it's really hard not to start with Views at least. But it depends too, I guess. Yeah.
In Drupal 8, where are the views stored? Are they YAMLs or are they exported to a PHP file or database?
So I'll repeat it. In Drupal 8, where are the views stored? I feel like they went back and forth between storing things in YAML and storing things in the database, and I don't know where that's at right now.
Okay, I'll look.
I think it's still stored in the database, but it's kind of like in Drupal 7 with chaos tools and features. Like you can easily export it as a YAML and have it run from that, but I don't know what it does by default.
Okay. Because if I wanted a copy of Vue from one site to another, you need to export it just where.
No, so that's actually very simple. So any view that you have, you can go click the little drop down next to where you can clone a display, and you can say export, and it'll give you this code. You copy that, you go to any other Drupal site, you paste it in, you go to the import section, paste it in, and click go. And assuming all of the fields are the same, which maybe you can't assume, but if you recreate all the fields, it'll then create the view for you. So it's easy to do that at least. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, well, thank you all very much.